Good afternoon and welcome. Let's take a look at the top story that we are tracking for you. France is all set to impose tighter virus restrictions in the country as it steps up its efforts to contain the surge in virus cases. French Prime Minister Jean Castex said on Thursday that the country will extend a 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. curfew for the entire nation to curb the spike in infections. Now, the curfew will come into force on Saturday and will remain in effect for at least 15 days. All shops and businesses will be closed during the curfew, except for emergency services. Now, the latest move tightens an 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. curfew that is already in place and has been since December. And the new curfew is seen as a way to avoid a full national lockdown. But Castex said further restrictions would be imposed without delay if the situation deteriorates further.
Cette mesure de couvre-feu obéit à une logique de freinage préventive. Elle permet de graduer notre riposte et d'essayer d'éviter de passer à des mesures plus difficiles, comme nous en avons déjà connu à 2 reprises l'année dernière. Elle vise à réduire encore davantage les contacts sociaux sur les heures de fin de journée, tout en permettant le maintien des activités économiques, éducatives et des déplacements pendant la journée.
The tighter evening restrictions were already imposed in some hard-hit eastern regions of the country. Meanwhile, Castex also announced new restrictions for people arriving into France from countries outside of the European Union. Now, people arriving in the country now have to produce a PCR test with negative results and then need to self-isolate for 7 days. Meanwhile, German Chancellor Angela Merkel has also called for tougher restrictions to contain the country's worsening coronavirus outbreak. During a meeting with top party officials on Thursday, Angela Merkel called for faster actions to contain the virus spread. A meeting with 16 state premiers to review the pandemic restrictions is likely to take place in the coming week. Now, Germany is currently witnessing a massive spike in infection rates. The country reported a record surge in COVID-19 related deaths. Authorities have recorded nearly 1,200 deaths in the last 24 hours. Now, we are being joined by our DW correspondent, Chelsea Delaney. Thanks for being with us. Now, Germany has reported a new record number of deaths from coronavirus this week, while its fatality rate is at a record high. And there are reports that German Chancellor Angela Merkel is now pushing for a mega lockdown. What exactly does this mean?
There is really pressure building on all sides to strengthen the lockdown measures that have been in place in Germany for several weeks now. What the new mega lockdown could mean, that's still being discussed, but some of the measures that have been proposed are, for one, in some ways, locking down the transportation system. This has been very controversial, and it's not clear exactly what the government wants to do, but there does seem to be consensus that there are still too many people on public transportation, on the subway, on long distance trains as well. So they want to get the number of people taking transportation down. They've also discussed potentially strengthening border controls, as well as reducing contact through contact restrictions even further. Right now, people can meet with 2 households can meet. They want to potentially bring those numbers down further. And this, of course, comes as we see the numbers and the fatality rates really starting to skyrocket. Germany is seeing its hospital system become increasingly overloaded, and there is a lot of concern, particularly about the new variants of the coronavirus from the UK and from South Africa, which do seem to be spreading more quickly. So the federal government and state ministers are planning to meet next week. They've actually brought forward that meeting, which really just shows how concerned they are about the current situation.
Right, Chelsea. Now, Germany's health authorities have said that about 1% of the population has been vaccinated so far against the virus. Now, that is far below the vaccination rates with comparative countries like the US and the UK. Why is this?
Germany is certainly lagging behind. If you look at this 1% vaccination rate for Germany, that's compared to almost 5% of the population having been vaccinated in the UK and about 3.5% in the United States. So we are moving more slowly. Part of that is because the EU took longer to approve the first vaccine. So we are running a couple weeks behind other countries in terms of beginning the vaccination campaign. But all of Europe is also, and all of the world is facing a shortage of vaccines. There are not enough vaccines available at this point, so that's also causing a problem. But there also seems to be some sort of disorganization on the ground in terms of rolling this out. For example, in Frankfurt yesterday, the system that people use to book appointments was down for several hours. So there seems to be a lot of different issues holding this up. But if we don't move faster, if more people aren't vaccinated quickly, this puts more people's lives at risk and also will delay the reopening of the economy.
Right. And on the economy, at the same time, German businesses continue to resist remote working. We have a stat of 14% of employees in Germany working from home offices at the end of last year. This according to a survey. So this could be then contributing to the spread of the virus.
Yes, and this has become a major political touchstone in the past couple of days. Just a few minutes ago, German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier called for businesses to allow employees to work remotely because clearly many people are continuing to go into offices. They're continuing to take trains and public transportation to get there. They're potentially socializing with coworkers, and all of this is a big concern. There aren't hard statistics on exactly how much of these infections are coming from offices and things like that, but we have seen some pretty extreme outbreaks, for example, in the meat industry, in the parcel delivery industry. But this will take some changes and a lot of incentivizing businesses to get more employees to work remotely. So some of the political discussions we're hearing right now are potentially imposing fines on employers who won't allow their employees to work remotely, or other tax incentives to try and get them to allow that more often, because this is an area where the government thinks that they can really cut down on contact and potentially help slow the spread of the virus.
Chelsea, thank you very much for bringing us all the latest on COVID in Europe, coming to us from Berlin there. WION, now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.